is Sekulow. We're joined now by our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Secretary Pompeo, I want to get right to it because there's a lot going on here in our country and a lot, of course, with the president overseas. President Biden, he landed in Israel today, and he's claimed that the relationship with Israel and the United States is deeper and stronger than ever. I have a feeling, I'm going to ask you this, I have a feeling I know your answer, but do you buy that at all?
Well, Jordan, it's not whether I buy it or not. The Israeli people know that's just not true.
Yep.
The Israeli leadership and the people in Israel can see clearly that when Hamas attacked Israel just weeks after the Biden administration took office, it took them days to just make a simple statement to say the Israelis have the right to defend themselves. And when there were arguments inside the Democrat Party about actually underwriting Iron Dome, or when we decide, we're going to try and cut a deal with Iranians that will give a clear pathway to a nuclear weapon in that theocracy, those authoritarian thugs in Iran, I think the Israeli people can see that is very different from how I behaved when I was Secretary of State, how America behaved during my time. And they know that creates risk for them, and we should all know that creates risk for us here in the United States as well.
So, Mike, the Jerusalem Post has a headline, and this is what it reads: Biden's visit, and then it says, when a politically weak president meets an interim prime minister. They're talking about the fact that you got a president that is definitely viewed internationally as weak right now. You've got Israel going through their fifth election in 3 years. And at the same time, you've got a PLO, which is a terrorist organization, let's be clear. And they're demanding that in order for there to be substantive meetings with the president and substantive progress, that three things have to happen. One, they will remove Israeli recognition, and they will cut their security ties unless Israel gives them these access to points and land and more money and all of this. And I say to myself, and you know this as well as anybody in the world, if Israel were to cut its security ties with the Palestinian leadership, with Mahmoud Abbas, he would last about 20 minutes before Hamas would take over.
Yeah. Some of this is complicated, Jay. Some of this is really straightforward. You just highlighted the straightforward piece.
Right.
The security in Judea and Samaria, the security in the entire region is dependent upon a capable Israeli security force. The fact that President Biden, given his domestic challenges, is there meeting with Mahmoud Abbas, probably telling him, "Don't worry, we're going to set up a consulate in Jerusalem," is deeply destabilizing for the region and bad for the United States, and certainly bad for those of us who believe that Israel is the rightful homeland of the Jewish people. Abbas is weak. He is corrupt. He has no incentive to make any kind of deal with any Israeli leader, let alone as they're making their way through their governmental changes as well. And we shouldn't forget, the Gaza Strip still sits there with Hamas controlling the joint. And the combination of those two, terrorists in Gaza Strip and the corrupt leader in Judea and Samaria, is not something that's going to lead to increased prosperity. It's why we went the path of the Abraham Accords. It's why we were isolating Iran as never before. And when I think that maybe Israel is going to be asked by Mahmoud Abbas to cut security ties, that is a recipe for danger and the reason and loss of life, both Israeli life and loss of life for people in the west part of the Jordan River as well.
Secretary Pompeo, one of the issues that's interesting about this trip is that you've got also a visit to Saudi Arabia. You wrote on Fox News, the president's trip to Saudi Arabia will likely not correct his egregious policy missteps. What do you see as the outcome? Like, is he going there to beg for oil, for gas? We get that that's part of it. But what comes out of this meeting ultimately?
I think he was getting differing counsel from his team, and finally President Biden said, "Fine, I'll go." Remember, he campaigned on eliminating fracking and energy production in the United States and making the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia a pariah state. That's a recipe for high gas prices and people being unable to afford to cool their homes in the summertime. And that's what they're up against. And so they're trying to go scramble to say, we did our part. We tried to put this relationship back in place. I've heard some good language from some on the team. They talk about trying to integrate the Arab nations, Israel, the Gulf states. I think that's all a good thing. That's a corollary, a follow-on to the Abraham Accords. But boy, when you say that there are no socially redeemable qualities of the leadership of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and you're going to make them a pariah nation, Godspeed. Good luck. And by the way, and then sit across the table from the Iranians. that is not the kind of thing that actually delivers less risk to the United States of America.
You know, I was just thinking about that. We have an office in Jerusalem, and have had that office for a long time. So we've been there negotiating when there's been a lot of conflict. As you know, I've gone to the International Criminal Court multiple times, representing Israel's interests. They don't recognize the jurisdiction of the court, but we went in to say this is the position, and have been successful. I mean, so far the ICC, shockingly, with